Alright, so this is the main shaft bearing for the O2M and I believe O2J Volkswagen transmissions. There's a lot of videos out there of people removing the snap ring that holds this. It kind of comes from inside the transmission and sits on this bevel right here. They're known for getting a little bit of play in them and starting to wobble around, and you get a little bit of whining noise from the transmission because the gears aren't lining up quite like they're supposed to be. In our case, or my son's case, that's not what happened. His transmission started making noise, and by the time I was told that it was making noise, the outer cover, that protects that bearing, which is this, it's made of metal and got a kind of rubber coating on it with some ribs. It goes over the top of it like this, and this is what you'll see from the outside of the transmission. This cover had been kicked off or had fallen off, and the plastic cage in here that keeps the ball bearings separated, there's 7 balls in here, keeps those ball bearings separated so that the inner and the outer race have even amounts of pressure on them. The plastic race was gone, or plastic cage was gone. The inner race on his is kind of scarred up, like some of the ball bearings stuck for a second, and it's only on, I don't know, maybe a quarter of it, so like 45 degrees out of the full circle. On the inner has some scarring on it. The outer race, where the balls ride on the inside edge right there, still looks great all the way around. Now the only way to change this bearing out completely is to take the transmission out and take it apart, because as you can see, this lip right here, it comes from inside the transmission, and this is the outside over here on my right. And then the input shaft comes through it, and there's a snap ring on the end of that shaft right where my finger would be. So you have to take the transmission out, take it completely apart, and then you can actually replace this bearing. So what I'm going to try to do, the plan was to take this plastic cage off and try to snap it onto the bearing that's in my son's transmission and keep the balls separated again like they're supposed to, see if that straightens out the shaft and the noise goes away. But upon further inspection, like I said, this inner race is scarred up. So what I'm going to try to do is get all the balls on the bottom, the 7 balls that are in there on the bottom, apply some pressure to the top here and pop that free. If I can get just a little bit of movement on that input shaft and pop them free, I can take the balls out of there, maybe heat up this inner race, remove the snap ring, heat up the inner race, and it should expand, and then maybe slide it off of there. If I can do that, I'll do the same process with this one. Heat up this inner race, and see if I can slide this inner race onto his. That would get rid of the bad part, get this plastic cage onto his, and see if we can essentially rebuild this bearing without having to pull the transmission apart. I'm going to do a video of my efforts on that, and it's either going to go well or the car's not going to be able to move after that, because I just won't be able to get a bearing back on the transmission. So kind of rolling the dice. He can't drive it very long the way it is now because it's just going to tear itself apart. So it's either we give this a try or put another transmission in the car, or take it out, take it apart, and put this bearing in there, which honestly I don't have the time to do right now. The part number for this bearing is right here. It's the O2M 311235A. And the part number for the cover is the O2M 301211-B. We got both of these parts from FCP Euro. This cover wasn't listed on their website, so I had to call them and make sure I was getting the right cover. I had found the correct bearing on their website. The guy I talked to there was extremely helpful, actually took the VIN number of my son's car, made sure that this was the correct bearing, and then he found the correct part number for me for this cover here, so that I've got what I need to give this a go and see if it works out. I'll do a second part to this video with the process. I think I'm going to cut the outer race here, just score it down the side and cut it so I can expand it and make it easier to get the balls out of here without damaging this cage. And that will also free up the inner race, which I need if I'm going to be able to replace the inner race off the input shaft on the transmission. So I'll do another video that has the process for trying to get this off of the input shaft while the transmission's still in the car, and the process for taking this apart and hopefully putting it back together with these parts, and we'll see how that works out. But it's dark right now, so I'm not going to go out there and work on it, you know, trial and error with this stuff in the dark. So I'll give it a try in the morning, and I'll start the next video there.